No one in the boardroom was surprised when Min-jae announced his engagement. That alone should have worried him. The room was all glass and steel, 30 floors above Seoul's traffic-choked streets. Morning light poured through the windows, reflecting off polished tables and unreadable faces. Executives sat straight-backed, hands folded, already wearing polite smiles before Min-jae even finished his sentence. "I'll be getting married next spring," he said calmly. "Her name is Seo Yeon." Applause followed. Immediate. Perfect. Too perfect. Someone joked about stability. Another mentioned how ideal she was for the company's image. A senior director nodded slowly, as if this moment had been approved long before Min-jae himself agreed to it. Min-jae smiled because that was what CEOs did. Inside, something shifted, not discomfort exactly, but the faint sensation of stepping into a room where the furniture had already been arranged without him. Seo Yeon's photo appeared later that afternoon in an internal announcement email. Elegant. Neutral. Impossibly composed. The kind of beauty that didn't challenge anyone, didn't provoke envy or desire, just quiet approval. And that was the first hook. Why did everyone already seem to know her? Seo Yeon watched the same announcement from a black car parked 2 streets away from the building. Her phone vibrated once. A short message appeared. Confirmed. Phase 1 complete. She locked the screen without replying. Outside, Seoul moved fast, delivery bikes weaving between cars, pedestrians glued to their phones, neon signs still glowing faintly from the night before. Inside the car, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Seo Yeon adjusted her engagement ring. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. Everything about her life had been measured, selected, tested. She had met Min-jae exactly 12 times before the proposal. Enough to seem natural. Not enough to be real. She knew his routines, his food preferences, the nights he stayed late at the office because he didn't like going home to empty rooms. She knew which childhood memory softened his voice and which question made him shut down. She knew all of this because she had been trained to. Seo Yeon wasn't nervous. She wasn't excited. She was alert, like an actress stepping onto a stage where forgetting even one line could collapse the entire production. Jia spilled coffee on Min-jae's schedule. It soaked through printed pages, blurring meetings, numbers, decisions that shaped entire departments. She froze, horrified, already apologizing too much. "I'll reprint it," she said quickly, reaching for tissues. "I'm so sorry, I wasn't looking." "It's fine," Min-jae interrupted. Their eyes met. Just briefly. But something passed between them, not attraction, not romance. Recognition. Jia worked in strategic planning. She dressed plainly, spoke carefully, and never laughed during meetings even when jokes were made. She was efficient in a way that didn't seek attention. Invisible, almost. Almost. As she gathered the ruined papers, she hesitated. "Congratulations," she added, quieter. "On your engagement." Min-jae nodded. "Thank you." After she left, the room felt emptier than before. He couldn't explain why, but her presence had disrupted something like static in a signal he hadn't known was being broadcast. Later that night, Min-jae realized something unsettling. Jia was the only person that day who hadn't smiled when she congratulated him. The engagement dinner was held at a restaurant that didn't take reservations unless your name carried weight. Seo Yeon arrived on Min-jae's arm, moving with effortless grace. She greeted investors' wives by name, remembered allergies, laughed at jokes she'd clearly heard before. "She's perfect," someone whispered behind them. Min-jae heard it. Again. That word. Perfect. During dinner, Seo Yeon touched his hand at the right moments. Listened attentively. Asked questions that made him look thoughtful, decisive, human. Yet every time Min-jae tried to lean into the evening to relax, to feel, he felt like he was being gently guided. Not controlled. Curated. Across the room, Jia stood near the exit, helping coordinate logistics for the event. She watched Seo Yeon carefully, not with jealousy, but with professional curiosity. Something about Seo Yeon's timing was off. Her pauses too precise. Her expressions too balanced. Jia felt a chill she couldn't explain. This wasn't a woman in love. This was a woman executing a role flawlessly. That night, Min-jae stood alone in his apartment, city lights stretching endlessly below his balcony. Seo Yeon had gone home early, claiming a headache. Her departure was gentle, considerate, and relieving. Min-jae loosened his tie and stared at his reflection in the glass. He should have felt accomplished. Settled. Safe. Instead, a single question surfaced, uninvited and persistent. Why did this feel like a merger, and not a marriage? Behind him, his phone buzzed. A new email notification. No sender name. Just a subject line. Due diligence requires sacrifice. Min-jae's chest tightened. Somewhere in the city, Seo-yeon lay awake, staring at the ceiling, knowing the next phase would be harder. And Jia sat at her kitchen table, replaying Seo-yeon's smile in her mind, already aware that something about this engagement was dangerously wrong. Jia wasn't trying to snoop. That was the truth, at least the version she told herself. It was close to 9 p.m., the hour when the office quieted into a hum of air conditioning and distant traffic. Most employees had gone home. Jia stayed because she always did. There was comfort in staying late. No small talk. No forced smiles. She was compiling market strategy reports when a shared folder refreshed unexpectedly on her screen. New upload. The file name froze her fingers mid-typing. SY Behavioral Alignment Overview. Jia frowned. She clicked it before she could talk herself out of it. Charts filled the screen. Psychological profiles. Compatibility metrics. Timelines. Phrases like emotional responsiveness calibration and public perception optimization appeared again and again. And there, embedded neatly in the appendix, was Seo-yeon's photo. Not a lifestyle photo. Not a social one. A corporate profile image. Jia's breath caught. This wasn't a background check. This wasn't a personality test. This was a blueprint. And it wasn't just Seo-yeon. Min-jae's name appeared throughout the document like a target. Seo-yeon stood in front of a full-length mirror in a minimalist apartment that barely felt lived in. White walls. Neutral furniture. No personal photos. A woman's voice came through a discreet earpiece. Replay scenario C. Seo-yeon inhaled slowly. If he questions your availability, she said calmly, eyes fixed on her reflection, you reassure him without appearing dependent. You validate his independence. She paused, adjusted her tone by a fraction. I understand how busy you are. I admire that about you. The voice responded, acceptable. Reduce warmth by 5%. Increase confidence. Seo-yeon repeated the line. Perfect this time. She removed the earpiece and sank onto the edge of the bed. For a moment, just one, her composure cracked. She wasn't exhausted from acting. She was exhausted from never being allowed to stop. Her phone buzzed. A reminder notification. Phase 2, emotional bond reinforcement begins tomorrow. Seo-yeon closed her eyes. She wondered, not for the first time, who she would be if no one had designed her. Min-jae didn't intend to test Seo-yeon. It happened naturally, the way doubt always does. They were having lunch at a quiet cafe near the Han River. Sunlight danced across the water outside. Couples laughed. A dog barked somewhere nearby. Normal life. Do you ever get tired? Min-jae asked suddenly. Seo-yeon looked up from her tea, blinking once. Tired, she repeated. Of planning everything, he clarified. Of being composed. There it was. A question not in the script. For half a second, Seo-yeon hesitated. Then she smiled softer than usual. I think composure is just another form of respect, she said. For others. For myself. It was a good answer. Too good. Min-jae nodded, but something inside him leaned away instead of closer. He realized then that he couldn't remember a single moment where Seo-yeon had been messy, emotional, unfiltered. Love, he thought, was supposed to be inefficient. Jia printed the file. She knew she shouldn't have. She knew this crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But once she started seeing patterns, she couldn't stop. Seo-yeon's education sponsorship traced back to a consulting firm closely tied to Min-jae's board. Her job placements aligned perfectly with corporate interests. Even her social circles were curated. Jia leaned back in her chair, pulse pounding. This wasn't romance. This was risk management. Someone had decided Min-jae needed stability, predictability, and control. And they had built a woman to provide it. Jia thought of the way Seo-yeon smiled. The way executives approved of her instantly. The way Min-jae looked more like an asset than a man. Jia whispered to herself, you don't even know you're trapped. She didn't know yet whether Seo-yeon was victim or accomplice. But she knew one thing. If Min-jae married her, this company would own him completely. Jia waited until it was too late to back out. Min-jae was alone in the office again, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. He looked tired. Human. Do you trust her? Jia asked quietly. He looked up, surprised. Seo Yeon. Jia nodded. Not as your fiancé, as a person. Silence filled the room. That's an odd question, Min-jae said carefully. I know how this will sound, Jia continued. But sometimes, people aren't introduced into our lives because they love us. Sometimes they're assigned. Min-jae studied her face, searching for motive. Jealousy. Ambition. Anything that made this easy to dismiss. He found none. I'm not asking you to believe me, Jia said. I'm asking you to watch more closely. She turned to leave, heart pounding. Behind her, Min-jae didn't respond. But later that night, alone again, he replayed Seo Yeon's pauses. Her timing. Her flawless restraint. And for the first time, he wondered if love could be engineered. Min-jae had been summoned, not invited. The meeting room was smaller than the main boardroom, windowless, designed for decisions that weren't meant to be seen. 3 men sat waiting. All older. All powerful. All smiling in the way that stripped warmth from the gesture. Sit, Chairman Park said gently. Min-jae did. We've been meaning to speak with you about Seo Yeon, another board member added, folding his hands. She's performing exceptionally. Performing. The word echoed. Min-jae forced a neutral expression. She's my fiancée, not a project. Chairman Park chuckled softly. Everything connected to leadership is a project. They spoke openly then. Too openly. About investor confidence. Media optics. How instability had destroyed promising CEOs before. How Seo Yeon reduced volatility. She was selected because she fits you, Park said. Better than you fit yourself. Min-jae's chest tightened. You designed my life partner, he said slowly. We optimized it, Park corrected. You still proposed. That was your choice. Min-jae realized then how manipulation worked best by allowing you to believe you were free. Seo Yeon received the directive at 2:14 a.m. Subject, compliance review. Message, emotional deviation detected. Correct immediately. She stared at the screen, heart pounding. Earlier that evening, Min-jae had asked her something small. What scares you? She hadn't answered right away. No script prepared her for that. Now, alone in her apartment, Seo Yeon did something she had never done before. She didn't respond. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a call. She declined it. Her reflection in the dark window looked unfamiliar. Older. Tired. Real. For the first time, Seo Yeon asked herself a forbidden question. If she walked away, would there be anything left of her? Jia noticed the change immediately. Her access permissions lagged. Her login attempts flagged. A man she didn't recognize lingered near her floor too often. She was being audited. That meant the company knew someone had seen the file. Jia moved quickly. She copied what she could onto an external drive, heart racing, hands steady through sheer will. She didn't know how long she had. As she left the office that night, her phone vibrated. Unknown number. Stop digging, a voice said calmly when she answered. You're not important enough to protect. The line went dead. Jia stood frozen in the street, soul rushing past her, suddenly aware of how small one person was against a system designed to erase them. But fear sharpened her resolve. If she disappeared quietly, nothing would change. Min-jae didn't confront Seo Yeon immediately. Instead, he watched. He noticed how she adjusted herself depending on who was present. How her laughter softened around executives, sharpened around him, disappeared entirely when alone. That night, in the quiet of his apartment, he asked her directly. If I quit tomorrow, he said, would you still love me? Seo Yeon froze. This wasn't just off-script. This was dangerous. She could hear her handler's voice in her head. Redirect. Reassure. Stabilize. Instead, she whispered, I don't know. The silence that followed was heavy, terrifying and honest. Min-jae exhaled slowly. Neither of them slept that night. Jia sent the email at dawn. Not to the board. To Min-jae. Subject line, you were never meant to choose her. Attached, everything. She watched the sent confirmation appear and felt both relief and dread. Elsewhere, Seo Yeon packed a small bag without knowing why. And Min-jae stared at his screen as the truth assembled itself piece by piece, his life reframed as a controlled experiment. This wasn't about love. It never had been. And now that he knew, the company's greatest risk wasn't scandal. It was him. Seo Yeon was not invited to sit. The room was smaller than she remembered, the lighting harsher. 2 men and 1 woman sat across from her, people who had shaped her life without ever asking who she wanted to be. "You're destabilizing the asset," the woman said calmly. Seo Yeon clenched her hands. "I'm a person." They exchanged amused looks. "You were recruited because you lacked strong personal attachments," one man replied. "That made you adaptable." "Adaptable. Replaceable. You don't get to ignore directives," the woman continued. "Your emotional deviation puts years of planning at risk." Seo Yeon's voice shook, but she didn't lower it. "You trained me to simulate love. You never trained me for what happens when it becomes real." Silence followed. The woman leaned forward. "Then you will correct yourself. Or you will be corrected." Seo Yeon stood up. For the first time in her life, she walked out of a room without permission. Jia sensed it before it happened. The way her phone lost signal. The unfamiliar car idling near her apartment. The delayed elevator. She didn't go home. Instead, she ducked into a convenience store, heart racing, pretending to browse while checking reflections in the glass. The man from the office stood outside, speaking into his phone. She slipped out the back entrance and ran. Seoul blurred around her, flashing lights, exhaust, voices. She didn't scream. She didn't stop. Fear sharpened her focus into something clean and precise. She sent one text while running. To Min-jae. "They're not bluffing. If anything happens to me, release everything." She disappeared into the crowd. Min-jae had 30 minutes before the press conference. 30 minutes to decide whether he wanted to remain powerful or remain himself. The documents Jia sent sat open on his tablet. Psychological assessments. Financial incentives. Control strategies. Seo Yeon's life summarized in bullet points. His phone buzzed. Seo Yeon's name. "I don't know what you're about to do," she said softly when he answered. "But if you walk away, I won't stop you." That honesty broke something open in him. "I'm not walking away," Min-jae replied. "I'm stepping into it." At the podium, flashes exploded like small detonations. "I was encouraged," Min-jae said steadily, "to believe my engagement was organic. It wasn't. It was engineered." Gasps rippled. He continued anyway. Stability was prioritized over consent. Image over humanity. Somewhere behind the cameras, the board watched their control dissolve. Seo Yeon watched the broadcast from a bus stop. Rain fell lightly, blurring the city. People gathered around screens inside shops, murmuring as Min-jae spoke. She pressed her fingers together, grounding herself. This wasn't part of any plan. And yet it felt right. For the first time, someone wasn't protecting her image. They were protecting her existence. Her phone buzzed once. "Unknown number. Leave the city," the message read. "Now." Seo Yeon deleted it. She stayed. The backlash was immediate. Stocks dipped. Sponsors hesitated. The board released statements distancing themselves. Min-jae was called reckless, emotional, unfit. Jia remained unreachable. Seo Yeon was officially unaffiliated. That night, Min-jae stood in his apartment again, same view, different man. The life designed for him was collapsing. And for the first time, it felt like freedom. Jia surfaced 3 days later. Not dramatically. Not publicly. She appeared in Min-jae's inbox with a single sentence. "I'm safe. I'm no longer invisible." Attached was a location pin, not Seoul. Jia had crossed a line the company couldn't quietly erase. Detaining her would confirm everything Min-jae exposed. Silencing her would escalate the story beyond repair. So they let her go. But freedom came with exile. Min-jae read her message twice, then once more. Relief arrived first. Guilt followed closely behind. She had done what he couldn't at first, chosen risk without knowing the reward. Seo Yeon moved into a small studio apartment with uneven floors and a window that didn't quite close properly. It was nothing like the places she'd been assigned before. She bought mismatched dishes, burned her first attempt at cooking, left clothes unfolded. At night, she lay awake, unnerved by the absence of guidance. No messages, no corrections, no voice reminding her who to be. Freedom felt disorienting. One afternoon, she stood in front of a mirror the same way she had hundreds of times before and realized she didn't know how to stand when no one was watching. So she stood imperfectly. And let that be enough. The corporation survived. They always did. A restructuring announcement followed. A few resignations. New language. New faces. The word optimization quietly disappeared from internal memos. Min-jae resigned as CEO. Publicly, it was framed as a mutual decision. Privately, it was a refusal to continue benefiting from a system that had treated people as variables. He walked out of the building without cameras, without applause, and for the first time, without a role to maintain. Min-jae and Seo Yeon met weeks later. Not at a cafe, not at a place with memories. They walked along the river in silence until Seo Yeon spoke. "I don't know if what I felt was love," she said honestly. "I was trained to mirror what you needed." Min-jae nodded. "And I don't know if what I wanted was you, or the safety you represented." They stopped walking. No promises were made. No hands were held. But something rare happened. They told the truth without trying to preserve an outcome. When they parted, it wasn't with regret. It was with respect. Jia worked under a different name now. Different country. Different firm. But the work was the same, uncovering structures that hid control behind efficiency. She kept one file saved offline. Not as evidence. As a reminder. Systems didn't collapse because of anger. They collapsed because someone chose to see clearly. Months later, Min-jae received an invitation. A startup. No board. No image consultants. They wanted leadership, not obedience. He accepted. That evening, he stood by his window again, the city still vast, still indifferent, but his reflection no longer felt owned. Somewhere else in the city, Seo Yeon laughed at something small and unexpected. And Jia slept without fear of footsteps behind her. No one called it a victory. But it was something better. It was real.